Hi, Erika. It's nice to meet you. I'm Donna Byrd from BlueButterfly.
It's so great to be here. It's great to meet you too.
We are so excited to have you today. Erika Skinner is the author of Pets Are Family. And Erika, if you don't mind, we're just going to jump right in.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Perfect. All right. So, what inspired you to write Pets Are Family?
So it's a great question. I never thought I would be an author. My day job is a CEO of a company that helps pharmaceutical companies bring their products to market. But last year, I lost my golden nugget, Kingston. And I've always had pet bereavement leave in our company policies. My husband and I chose not to have human kids. So we knew we were always going to have our dogs. But what was interesting to me is when he passed and I took the time off, it was surprising to me how much shame I still felt around taking the time off. Just this feeling of maybe my team won't understand, or they will think, why can't you just get it together? It's just a dog. And so here I am with a policy in place. I own my own company. I can take the time off work, and I'm feeling this level of shame that I now feel a responsibility to help others at least have some time off work, because I can only imagine if you're an employee that the weight would be even more than what I
Right.
had.
Definitely. Well,
Yeah.
we definitely want to get into that a little bit more in a few moments, just to talk about pet loss in the workspace and
Yeah.
grieving in the workspace. But before we get there, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how did you cope with the loss of your pet?
Yeah, I was not coping successfully at the beginning. I threw myself into work. I started to work out twice a day. I was trying to do anything to not feel the pain. I think I was surprised how much it actually hurt. That lasted a good like 11 days. And I write about that in my book. I ended up, having a moment where I vomited in a hot yoga class, not because it was hot, but because I just had pushed my body to do too much. So going home and getting in bed and realizing I had to call out of work that day and reschedule all of my meetings, I think that's when it really hit me, where I'm now all of the things I was feeling internally were showing externally, and there wasn't anything I was able to really do about that. So I had to acknowledge it, right? And really say to myself, you are truly feeling pain. And so you've got to process the pain. And so I think for me, the things that have, really helped me were, one was just even writing out my feelings, which is how the book started to get started. I needed to just get it out. Under like saying, yes, this is actually real pain, and you're feeling it, and acknowledge your feelings and honor them. Take some time off work, not have so many meetings during the day, have some breathing room, because you never know, like at what moment in the day
Right.
you.
Right.
And so I think it was giving myself some grace, creating some space, and then also talking about it. I think talking to other people about it made me really realize I'm not the only one and I'm not alone.
That makes sense. Did you have friends and family that understood, or did you really feel alone?
So for me, I feel really lucky because we have an Instagram account for our dogs. So they have like 40,000 followers all over the world. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, and when I'm upset and I'm crying and I'm laying in bed and my husband's asleep and I don't want to wake him up, I had somebody right in another country who was there sending me messages.
Right.
So I felt really lucky to not feel so alone. I did feel with my own family and friends who knew we only have our dogs, we don't have human kids. They were there for me for sure, right? They knew I was hurting, I was going through pain, but there were times where you almost feel like you have to ask permission to grieve, because if they have kids, they're like, it's not as bad as that would be. Or, I can't believe you're still struggling, or it's this hard, maybe you should see somebody. So you do start to feel like the tinges of is something wrong with me, or is this normal? And like, is this the normal way to grieve? And so it's not that I was lucky that I wasn't fully alone, but it still felt isolating, which is surprising, right? I think that's also why I wrote the book. Is here I am, I can take time off work, and I have these 40,000 people who are reaching out and sending me, notes, and we loved Kingston too from another country. And to still feel that, I know that's not the norm. I can't imagine how I would have gotten through it without it.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Kingston.
Oh my, Kingston was, he was a little boss baby. Shar are known for their attitude, and they really think about things. They don't just come for treats. They decide, do I really want to come take the treat from you, or do I have more important things to do? He had a very busy life with his doggy door. He patrolled the house, looked out all the windows. But the really beautiful thing about him is he always knew if you were having a hard day or if something was wrong, and he would just come and lean on you, and even put his arm like on your leg. And so he was such a beautiful soul. And he was so just like the leader of the pack. He taught all of our other pups how to sit, how to stay, like how to do all of the things. So he was also the best big brother.
That's great. Well, we appreciate you sharing the stories with us. And my understanding is you also have really incorporated a lot of the stories about Kingston in the book as well.
I did. Yeah. So the book really, I set it up in a few different ways. I wanted it to be for people who were going through the same thing to feel seen and to know you're not alone and what you're feeling is completely normal. And here I'm going to just bare my soul out. And then also for people who don't understand, right? You have somebody that you love and you can clearly see that there's something going on with them, but you yourself do not have a dog. So you're like, how can it be that they are your family, right? Like, how can it be that this is this hard?
Right.
So it's really with those two in mind. But I still broke it up into 5 different sections, where the first section is, listen, I'm telling you, this is the hardest thing I've ever been through. And sitting in a CEO role, you can probably think, oh, well, you have a cush life. Of course, this would be the hardest thing you've ever been through. And I wanted to just kind of put that, like, no, like I've actually been through really hard things in my life. I'm going to open up to you to share with you what they are. So that when I say this to you, you can really say like, okay, like, wow, this is real. But I do say in the book, if you don't need that kind of like, if you're already there with me and you're like, we know this is hard, you don't even have to read part 1. Like, let's just go to the next section, which is if you're going through this, like, this is how hard it was to make the decision to actually have him pass, all of the anticipatory grief that happens as you're waiting for the day to come. And even the day of, I planned all these things and it still was so traumatizing that day. So I wrote that section to just say, if you haven't gone through it, let me give you a window of insight into what it feels like. And for those who have gone through it, let me validate for you just how much it really was trauma. But also, if you don't want to go there, no problem. Like, go to section 3, which is all about healing. And that's where I talk a lot about the things that I did for myself and for my family around, like, how do we start to introduce joy into our lives again, little by little. You almost have to like remind yourself what it felt like. And then the last part of the book is all of my resources around just, I think I'm advocating for pet bereavement leave. But I also feel like there's little things that unless somebody points them out to you, it's not like inherently, it doesn't come to mind quickly to say, oh, right, like a single text could really change somebody's whole day. It could mean a lot.
Right.
That was a long answer for my book. So sorry.
It's extremely helpful. And I think for all of our viewers, it'll be helpful for them as well as they sort of think through, and hopefully they'll go out and get your book immediately.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this at the end again, but if you, where can they buy your book?
So the book is available on Amazon, on Apple Books. You can get it through the publisher. My website, petsorfamily.info, has the links to both of those. And then it's also available for order just on any like Walmart, Target. You can just go on there and order the book, and it's like a print on demand.
Perfect. Okay, great. All right. So can you provide a few examples of the ideas that you offer to cope, like how to cope with grief in your book?
Absolutely. For grieving parents, I think it's pet parents, which I call them pet parents in there. I think it's first even just saying that it's okay to say that. When I talk about my family too, I even say at the end of this chapter, I hope I don't have to say, fur kids. I can just say, these are my kids.
Right.
So the first thing I say is just like being okay with it and just calling it what it is, right? You are in a lot of pain, and so honor your feelings. For myself, I did not realize how important it was to go to therapy. And so I try to normalize that in my book too. And I still go. I lost Kingston in May of last year, and I'm still going weekly to talk to a therapist about it, which was interesting for them too, right? They had not had many people come in to talk about their pet loss. And for me, I'm like, I wonder if it's because people think, is it normal? Like, is this something I should be going to therapy about? So definitely I talk about therapy. I talk about, my husband and I talking about Kingston and allowing ourselves to be sad and to cry and to tell each other how we're feeling. I think is important. And then also the reminder of how to feel happiness again. So, we take our kids on walks, and they felt it too. There was like, after Kingston passed, they weren't running around, they weren't doing their pay patrol, because I think they were feeding off our own energy.
Right.
We started to help them too. Like, it's almost like they started to come back to life themselves, and their personalities were coming back.
And Erika, how old were your children when Kingston passed?
So Kingston was 8, and then Mishka is 7, Edmund is 6, and Teddy is 5. So
Okay.
even that, I think after Kingston passed and talking to my therapist, I had said, gosh, how irresponsible of me to have really not thought about they're each 1 year after the other, right? They're all aging together. And her thought was, how, you're already coming back to yourself of saying it was irresponsible to do this, versus just like appreciating the love that you're feeling with them. And that the reason that you hurt so bad is because that's how much you loved them. And
Right.
that's a beautiful thing,
Right. Right. Well, have you, and let's see. So what are some of the actionable steps for our readers? If they are experiencing grief, how do they navigate this
Yeah.
grief and honor their pet's memory at the same time?
I think the actionable things would be, I wish I would have known about your website earlier. I think that would have been a really beautiful thing to be able to do for Kingston. It's just a really nice way to have somewhere to go, right? When a human being passes, you have their grave site to go to, or there's other people are finding out about it. There's ceremonies. So trying to just elevate that their life really mattered. I wish I would have known about your site. So I think definitely that's one thing I would want to have. I would tell everyone, you should do this. It would probably feel really great. For us, we created an altar. So we have Kingston's ashes, and then we have a dog bowl, and we have a picture of him. And, sometimes I walk by and I'm like, hi, or, you just talk to him as you're walking by.
Right.
That really helped, in a big way, because I felt like, again, it was this honoring of his life. I would also say, if your company doesn't offer pet bereavement leave, to take a day of PTO and take the time off to again honor their life, to say it's important enough to me that I know I'm just going to take a moment to go take a walk or take a hike, or go get ice cream if it was something that they really like to do, to again honor their memories and talk about it. I think it's a beautiful thing that I'm realizing is, when a human being passes away and somebody tells you about it, it's not instinctual to then come back and say, oh, my so-and-so passed too, right?
Right.
Like, you're just about that individual. But it is really beautiful when you talk about pets, because then somebody will say, oh my gosh, my princess when I was a kid, or I still think about,
Right.
dog Joe. And now you're both sharing stories about,
Right.
the love that you had for your animals. That was really healing for me.
That's nice. So it's sort of in community.
Yeah.
That's nice. So what about, there may be some people viewing this that have never owned a pet and really don't understand
Yeah.
the loss, like the grief that people feel when they lose their pets.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? What if they are not pet owners, they've never been pet owners, but they love their friend or their family member
Yeah.
who's lost, or colleague who's lost a pet? How do they show up for these people?
I would say, I love that you're asking. And if you are watching and that is you, I love that you're here watching this to learn, like, how do I show up for the people that I care about who have lost a pet and I don't understand? I think that's the very first step of saying, like, I really care. But it's what you just said around showing up. I think, the reason that it hurts so much is because they are a part of your every single day life, right? There's like rituals that you have. You see them all over your house. They're waiting for you when you get home from work. Some of them sleep in our beds. Like, I don't know how much closer you get than that. They really are so integrated into your life. So when they're not there anymore, it is such a shock, and your own home feels like a death trap, right? Like, you could look at anywhere and there could be like a couch or a memory or whatever it is that it could just bring you down. So I would say, for those who want to love on somebody, it is just showing up to it. It doesn't even cost money. You can send a text message that just says, I know you're going through a really hard time right now. And then mention the pet's name and say, I remember a memory of them. I think it's acknowledging that, and not just doing it once, right? Like, it doesn't just go away the day that it happens, but a week later or 2 weeks later, hey, I just want you to know I'm still thinking about you. Or I remembered this funny story about whenever I came over and they like ripped through the trash, or I don't know, right? Like something funny that can make you
Right.
like remember your pet. I think that's the biggest thing. I think if you are compelled to give a gift, there's some really beautiful ways that you can show up for your friend in giving them either something that reminds you of them, or a picture frame, or planting a tree in the backyard. It's whatever you would do for somebody who has lost a human being. Apply it to pets. Like somebody just lost their family member. They just happen to be furry. That's the only difference, is they just happen to be furry. Um, and they are in a lot of pain. So yeah, I think it is just showing up for them.
That's very, I'm sure there are people that will find that to be very helpful. It's interesting. One of the things that we've heard over and over again, that sometimes losing a pet can even be more difficult than losing a human
Yeah.
friend or family member.
Yeah.
You just spoke to it a little bit, but can you explain why that might be the case?
Yeah, I'm loving that you're bringing this up, because I would say last year, even when I was in like the depths of my grief, I would have had a hard time to say that out loud to somebody, because it does feel so, it feels a little wrong to say it. You feel a little bit ashamed to say it, but if I'm really being honest with myself, I do think that it is harder because they are so integrated into your life, right? You are actually seeing them not just every day. You might see a family member every day. You might work with your family's business, but your pets are actually like part of your life, and you are responsible for them. They are these little souls with completely different personalities. The relationship is different with every single one that you have. They depend on you, and there isn't a single like negative memory that you've had with them. Like, it is truly unconditional love. Um, that I think that's why, right? Like there was never a fight. There was never it was just
Right.
always like, I'm here for you, and you're like, you are their whole world. So they're just waiting for you to come be with them. And then they're also with you through the hardest times. I talk about that in my book too, of just, it's not just Kingston, right? I've had other pets, and you going through my life, you can really see how the constant is that your pets are always going to show up for you, and be there for you, even when you're not talking. Just to sit together is a big deal.
Right, that's a huge loss. We had a person on our staff that talked a little bit about the fact that because you're caring for your pet every day, because they're there, she actually said that it's somewhat like having a child.
Yeah.
And then you have the loss of your child. And and if it's difficult for you to understand, perhaps if you place it in that context,
Yeah.
then you have a bit more empathy,
Yeah.
understanding for a person who's lost a pet.
100%. And, I have had a couple conversations about that when you compare a pet to a child. And I've had a little bit of pushback where it's, well, but you knew your pet was only going to live for so long. And it's like, yes, and right. Like, we're
Right.
still human beings, and we are still caring for them in the same way that you carry for children. But with human children, your goal is to get them to be functioning and go out into the world and live their lives, right? Like, your pet is always going to be relying on you, and you're always going to be taking them in and caring for them. Um, and you also, I really believe, like, the thing for me that was really hard is I couldn't talk to Kingston. So like, he didn't understand what I was saying. So when I would have to leave him to have his heart fluid drained, or the day
Right.
that it was happening, I couldn't explain to him that I'm not, I'm coming back, right? Like, I'm leaving you here because this is the best thing to do for you, but I'm coming back. I'm never going to leave you. And I think that is also really hard, where you really can't talk to them about what's going on, or you're going to meet all these friends when you cross over, or you're going to puppy heaven, I think, right? Like, it's hard to not be able to know that you can say these things and that they're understanding them from you.
That's interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that, Erica.
Yeah.
Um, for our viewers, are there any specific rituals or practices that you recommend to help pet parents memorialize their pets and find closure?
Yeah, so I was gifted a tree, and at first my husband and I were like, "Oh my God, like, we are not we don't know what to do with this." But it was actually one of the, like, a day where we got to laugh together, because trying to plant the tree in our backyard was a whole thing, and the other kids were around. It was our first time, I think, laughing since Kingston had passed. But it's a really beautiful way to go back. Like, we put it in the back of the yard in a certain place, so we're walking through the yard to get back to his tree, and it feels really nice to have a place to go. We were also gifted a wind chime, and just listening to it when you're outside and hearing it, and then it makes you think of for us, for Kingston. It was really beautiful. The altar, I think, is just something that really makes a world of difference. Putting it together, taking the time and care to decide what's going to go on it, like all of those things really helped me feel like I am doing something that shows how much I cared for you. And I'm always going to come back and visit you. So, I mean, I think those are the three, the rituals. His birthday is actually tomorrow. So his favorite,
Oh,
his favorite thing was we used to order, and this is going to sound crazy, but we used to order Ruth's Chris on his birthday and get him a steak. And so we're going to order Ruth's Chris tomorrow and get the others a steak. So they're going to benefit from what Kingston loved. But doing things like that, right? Like remembering their birthday, remembering the gotcha day, remembering the things that they like to do and doing more of that because you're still thinking of them.
right, right. That's great. Well, we will celebrate tomorrow as well.
Thank you.
We on BlueButterfly.com, we actually have the memorial pages, the pet memorial pages, and we find that people really appreciate being able to send it out on anniversaries like the birthday, passing dates, things like that. So other people can offer their condolences on the page. They can post pictures or even video condolences just to say, just want you to know that we're thinking of you right now. So a lot of people use our pages for that reason.
Wow. I can't imagine getting video condolences back. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, if you are just joining us, if you're just joining our conversation here, my name is Donna Byrd. I'm with BlueButterfly.com, and I'm here with Erika Skinner, who is the CEO of and author of Pets Are Family. And we are going to shift our conversation just a bit, just to talk about pet bereavement and corporate policies related to pet bereavement. So, Erika, why do you believe it's important for corporations to include pet bereavement in their policies?
I think it is a really wonderful way to signal to your employees that you understand that their life outside of work matters and that their life outside of work can impact them at work. I think today's family structure is changing. I think a lot of people are deciding not to have kids, like human kids anymore, and they're having pets. Forbes said 70% of homes have pets. It's a $26 billion market outside of pet food. Like this is like for all of the other things, right? So people are really bringing pets in to be a part of their family that I feel from an employer standpoint to signal to your employees that you really recognize this. This is beyond the work happy hours or like general like table stakes of like insurance, but this could be a way to say that to them from an employee retention standpoint, an employee attraction standpoint, the younger generations as they're coming in. I think it benefits employers in a big way from just an like employee culture, but I also think from a like risk mitigation standpoint, like they're going to be interacting with your customers or with your clients, or if it's an hourly job, right? They're going to be in your shops and they're going to be in their own feelings that I think it is important to recognize the impact that can have as they're working, because it's work product, it's quality, but also like it's the experience that your customers are having at your own organization. So I really just feel beyond the compassionate piece of helping them understand, like from a true, like if you want to brass tacks it from a company standpoint, I think it matters. And so for me as the CEO of Directory, we're not AT&T, we're not American Express, like we're a smaller company. And if we can do it, I really just feel like bigger corporations can do it too. Even if it's a single day, I think it matters, right? I'm not even asking for parity. I think even a single day signals that, and at least it's in black and white that employee can see, wow, like they get it, that this is hard.
Right.
So I think it's not a hard thing to do, but it could have a really big impact.
That's extremely helpful. Can you elaborate though on ways or some actionable ways that companies can integrate pet bereavement support into their culture?
Absolutely. I think, on my website and some of the resources I created were around, if you're an employee wanting to advocate for pet bereavement leave, like here's the things you can send to HR, here's the FAQs that you can talk to your leadership team about. But also I think it's beyond even just adding in the policy a day. I think there needs to be training around how do you even talk to somebody if they've come and said, my pet just passed, and to say, well, it's just a dog. Like you can't leave it to your line manager to know how to have that conversation and how to receive that employee. So I think training for bereavement in general, I think is helpful, and it could go for both pets and people. But also, how do you introduce your employee back, right? They're not just taking a day and then they're going to come back and they're better and they're great. They also need to, have some care in integrating them back and really thinking about providing some space in their day. I've had some conversations with companies where they're like, "Oh, but we're not a consulting firm the way that you are. So it's not like we have clients and they're salaried employees. They're working, at the cash register." And so in my mind, I'm like, then let's get creative, right? Do you offer smoke breaks to employees? That's a 15-minute every hour break. So maybe you just go and say, "Hey, do you want to just take a break and go outside, right? Or go to the break room or take a walk around the store." I think it's just putting on a compassionate lens of saying, if somebody has lost someone who's really like a part of their life, how can you provide some comfort, whether it be how you receive them back or how you're checking in on them and letting them know that we know you're going through a hard time.
That's really thoughtful. Do you know of any companies that have that sort of have had that are great examples of implementing these types of policies?
I know that they're like one-offs. So, I've even seen like the Kimpton Hotel in San Francisco has
Mm.
pet bereavement leave, which I thought was interesting. But there's other companies that have paternity leave. So when you get a pet, to even give a day to like just adjust to like puppy shark teeth. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna add that to mine too. But I think I've not seen so much in pet bereavement leave as much as I've seen the paternity or pet insurance yet, and that's what I'm hoping to really advocate for. It's a little hard right now because in the United States we don't have a federal law that requires bereavement leave at all for
No.
human beings or for pets. Right?
Right.
There's only 5 states that mandate any time. Where if you're in Canada, you get 10 days federally. Like everybody gets 10 days of bereavement leave when something happens. And I have goals for Canada around like, can we include pets? And maybe it's not 10 days, maybe it's just a day or two. So I think for my goal is just to bring to light the benefits that an employer can get from showing up as, an empathetic and allowing for the human side to
Right.
put it into their policies. That do we really need to have legislature to say that this is needed versus I think there's some easy ways that you can show up for your people.
Can you talk a little bit more about the outcomes? Like if you do this, if you show up for your people, if you give the breaks, if you really show up not only compassionately, but very practically, if you will, in terms of what they're doing, what kinds of outcomes do you think companies could expect?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the more you can show an employee you actually care for them, the harder they're going to work for you, right? The more they're going to be loyal back to your brand, the more they're going to say, wow, they really showed up for me. So if we have a new pitch or if it's the busy season in retail, they're feeling more connected to you as an organization. And listen, as an owner of a company myself, I understand, right? We don't want to say we're all not a family, right? There's an employer-employee relationship. I get all of that. But when you can show up for somebody in a way like this, in one of the hardest moments of their life, what you can get back as an employer is an employee who is going to be committed to you, who is going to go the extra mile for not only your team, but for your customers, for the work, for the things that they are working on. And I don't know how you wouldn't want, that back.
Right. Right. I think that's really going to be very helpful for a number of our viewers.
Yeah. I think we do all these corporate culture things, right? And we do all of these like happy hours, but like this could really like be meaningful for somebody.
Right. Right. Very much so. Erika, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. This has been wonderful. What do you hope people get from reading your book?
I think for me, is can we have grace for things even if we don't understand them, right? Like nobody really knows how hard something is except for the person who's actually going through it. And so I think for pet parents, I hope for them, it's that they feel seen and heard and that they start to say like, gosh, I do need some time off, or I do need to see a therapist, or I do need to talk to my family more. But then for those who don't understand, to now they have a window in that they can say, wow, I still am not sure I fully get it, but I can at least give grace and I can at least show up for the people I care about. And I can send them the I'm thinking about you text messages. I can show up and drop off food. I can send flowers on the birthday of of their pet to just say like, I may not understand, but I love you. And so I just want to show you that and be here for you.
Right. Well, I know that our viewers really appreciate all of those examples of things they can do to support someone they love. Are there any additional insights or advice that you'd like to share with our audience about pet loss and grieving?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for pet parents, I think it's hard for us in general as a society. I think with grief, we're all kind of uncomfortable talking about it, and everybody like America just wants to like we just want to get back to normal, and we just want everything to be okay and move forward.
Right.
I really hope that for me it was by opening up and being vulnerable in this way that others feel that they can be too. And that also means like protecting your own, like you can put boundaries up for yourself. Like that was something that I put in my book too. I even drafted text messages you could send when you said you were going to go to a barbecue and you've changed your mind because you're really upset that day. And it's okay to just be like, hey, I'm not doing well today. I know you understand because you are whoever they are, and I'll catch you, next week. Or even reaching out to ask people for things that you need. Hey, I'm really struggling right now. I would really love a phone call, or I would really love if you could help me with whatever it is, right? Maybe you live alone and you can't even go grocery shopping. Like you're just like, you cannot function that day, that it is okay to reach out to people. This is the time to lean on your family and your friends.
Right.
Really lean on them.
Well, this has been so valuable today, Erika. Thank you so much. I think the people who have watched our conversation today will have quite a bit they can take away from it, from their own personal journey as they navigate through grief, or if they're supporting someone who is dealing with the grief of the loss of a pet, and if they're an employer. There's also a number of tips here that I think are extremely helpful for those that have staff and want to find ways to ensure that they're supporting their staff members as well. So again, this has been Erika Skinner. Erika is the CEO of Directory and the author of Pets and Family. Erika, tell us one more time how we can find you and how we can find how we can order Pets or Family.
Absolutely. So www.petsorfamily.info has all the things. And then I'm also really active on Instagram, Erika_Skinner, and on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from people if you need help with, how do I get this on my own company policies? I'm answering the notes. I'm having conversations. I'm that passionate about it because I just know I couldn't have gotten through it without having those things available to me. So it's just really important. And I want to say thank you to you for allowing this conversation to happen, for inviting people to come watch, because it is so important. And we really can't normalize something unless we talk about it. So it's just really awesome to get to talk about it.
Well, we are so grateful for you taking the time to do that today. We really do think that it's going to be very helpful for our viewers. All right. Well, again, if you are interested in the memorial pages that we discussed earlier, you can find them on bluebutterfly.com/pets. And we have a host of different designs and a number of ways that you can just build an online presence to memorialize and honor your pet. So thank you again, Erika. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, I do look forward to hearing all about this journey as you as an author. And we know that the people in our audience are going to really love the content that you've shared and the personal stories of you opening up and sharing with them too. So thank you.
Thank you.